Chapter 851. How dare you hit me? Fong Siyun roared. She looked aggrieved and tears rolled down her cheeks. Ning Xiangxi did not expect that she would be slapped by Fong Yunqi for no reason on the second day of her daughter's birthday. Fong Yunqi, what are you doing? Ning Xiangxi shouted. Are you crazy? When Fong Yunqi saw Fong Siyun's aggrieved and teary face, he regretted slapping her. Cici, don't call me that. I don't have a father like you. You never celebrated my birthday with me because you were busy catching ghosts. Now, you hit me for no reason. Fong Siyun covered her red and swollen cheek. I finally understand that in your eyes, my mother and I are not as important as you catching ghosts. All these years, ever since I can remember, you have never celebrated my birthday with me. Forget about me, you don't even remember my mother's birthday every year. You always come back every few days and tell me excitedly how many ghosts you have killed. Kill ghosts, kill ghosts. In your eyes, there are only ghosts. I only mentioned the legendary Tanggua and you hit me. You are too extreme. She is good to begin with. You. Slap. What Ning Xiangxi and Fong Siyun did not expect was that Fong Yunqi would slap her again. Fong Yunqi. Ning Xiangxi pushed Fong Yunqi away and hugged Fong Siyun, who was slapped on the other side of her face. Her eyes were red. What does this have to do with Cici? Do you have to hit me like this? Cici is telling the truth. All these years, besides catching ghosts, how much time have you spent at home? Fong Siyun stopped crying and glared at Fong Yunqi. Very well, you hit me again. Fong Yunqi, from today onwards, I, Fong Siyun, don't have a father like you. With that, she pushed Ning Xiangxi away and ran into the room. She grabbed her bag and rushed out. Ning Xiangxi's expression was ugly. I'll chase after her. Fong Yunqi quickly pulled her back. Why chase after her? She's already an adult, but she can't even speak properly. She deserves to be hit. Tanggua is not a good ghost. She is an evil ghost. Sooner or later, I will catch her and kill her. I don't know who was the one who spread those misleading messages that made so many people worship a ghost. It's too funny. Even my daughter admires a ghost. What a joke. I, Fong Yunqi, am a ghost-catching Taoist, but my daughter admires a ghost. What a joke. Does Fong Siyun know that she is humiliating me? Fong Yunqi said with a frown on his face. I think you're the funny one. You're the unreasonable one. Ning Xiangxi looked at the stubborn Fong Yunqi and couldn't help but recall the words of those seniors many years ago, telling her to leave Fong Yunqi. She used to care so much about this relationship and thought that she would be able to persuade Fong Yunqi. Unexpectedly, on the third day of their marriage, he received a mission saying that evil spirits were causing trouble. Despite her attempts to stop him, he insisted on leaving during their honeymoon. Back then, she understood Fong Yunqi's actions, and she also felt pity for him. After all, from his perspective, it was understandable for him to do those things. However, later on, they only saw each other a few times a year. Even though they had only known each other for a short period of time, she could still feel that their feelings for each other had not changed. However, who didn't want to see the person they liked all the time? When Fong Siyun was born, she was in pain in the hospital for half a day. She also called Fong Yunqi and he promised to come back immediately. Chapter 852. She thought that Fong Yunqi would be able to make it this time. She didn't expect that he would only come back 10 days after her daughter was born. As soon as he came back, he was so tired that he fell asleep. She raised Fong Siyun almost all by herself. Fong Yunqi would always stay for 3 or 4 days and then leave in a hurry. Sometimes, he would leave in the middle of the night. They lived like this for more than 10 years. No matter how passionate their feelings were, they were almost worn out. However, Fong Yunqi always thought that they were still in love. Well, they had only been together for about a year in the past 10 years. Weren't they still in love? Fong Yunqi's time didn't pass at all. He gave all his time to those ghosts. Killing ghosts was more important than her. Killing ghosts was more important than their daughter, Fong Xiyun. After thinking through all this, Ning Xiangxi's love for Fong Yunqi almost disappeared. She broke free from Fong Yunqi's hand. Fong Yunqi, this time, I hope you'll think it through. Do you want to catch ghosts or do you want this family? Xiangxi, you should understand me. Ning Xiangxi's eyes turned red and tears flowed out uncontrollably. She looked up at Fong Yunqi. It's been more than 10 years. Isn't it enough? Fong Yunqi, I've been by your side. I gave birth to Fong Xiyun for you and took care of the entire family alone. Don't I understand you enough? You don't spend more than a month at home in a year. Go out and ask around. Who can stand such a life? I had an illness and couldn't get up. I could only call my parents. Later, I was afraid that they would ask about you, so I could only call the ambulance myself. When I went to my daughter's parent-teacher conference, the other classmates thought that Cici was from a single-parent family. Because of this, Cici was unhappy for a long time, but I told her every time to respect and understand her father. Fong Yunqi, we've understood you for more than 10 years. Cici is already 16 years old. Did she say something wrong? She just touched the pain in your heart. You can't accept that the world worships a ghost that you can't kill. Fong Yunqi raised his hand and was about to hit her, but Ning Xiangxi did not even try to dodge. With tears in her eyes, she said, So, now that you've beaten Cici away, you're going to hit me? No, that's not it. Fong Yunqi looked into Ning Xiangxi's desperate eyes and felt his heart empty, as if he had lost something. He quickly grabbed Ning Xiangxi's hand and said, Cici, I'll spend more time with you in the future. I won't go out so often. Ning Xiangxi flung his hand away. Do you think this is what I'm angry about? Think about it carefully. I'm going to look for Cici. If you haven't figured it out, don't be in such a hurry to leave this time. Let's get a divorce first. I don't want to live this kind of widowed life anymore. With or without you, Cici and I would still be fine. Ning Xiangxi didn't say anything more to Fong Yunqi. She opened the door and left. Fong Yunqi covered his head in pain. I just wanted to kill those evil spirits. Cici said those things because she doesn't understand how evil ghosts can be. I'm just teaching her a lesson. She's still young. She doesn't know anything. When she grows up, she will understand how scary the ghosts in this world are. Dear host, you still have more than a year left in this world. The system reminded him kindly. It secretly glanced at the man and the ghost sitting hand in hand on the hillside. They were even more loving than 10 years ago. Chapter 853. So fast. When Tang Gua heard the system's voice, she was confused for a moment. How did so much time pass in such a short time? System, it's a long story, this host. Tang Gua came back to her senses. All right, I understand. The system was a little curious. How was the host going to say goodbye to this cutie Qinjiu? After all, Qinjiu had always been obedient to the host. The host couldn't bear to see him sad, right? Well, that might not be the case. It didn't have much hope for the host's conscience. Achoo. There's still more than a year. I have to leave. Qinjiu's heart tightened. He held her hand. I know. He counted the days every day. With 1 year less, he panicked a little. He had some hope that she had already forgotten about leaving. Are you really leaving? I have to. Tangguo looked up and smiled. Although the heavens here don't dare to punish me, I can't go against everything. There are some things that I can't understand for now. However, as long as she lived on, she would slowly understand everything. Aju, don't be sad. I'm not. Liar. Qingjiu held her face and kissed it. I'm very sad. I can't even lie to you. What made you leave? Can't we fight back even if we work together? No. Tangguo shook her head. Don't be delusional. Qingjiu thought to himself. Wasn't he delusional? Then I'll look for you in the future. Where are you going to look for me? Tangguo smiled. Qingjiu said directly, the ghost world. You can't find me there. This time, I reincarnated directly. System, alright, I understand now. So the host wants to use reincarnation to trick this guy. If that's the case, it's indeed more acceptable. If she said that she reincarnated, Qingjiu wouldn't look for her. If he couldn't find her in the end, he would definitely go crazy. Reincarnation. Qingjiu didn't expect her to give such an answer. Yes, reincarnation. Tangguo said. So, don't look for me. Just live this life peacefully. You'll be able to meet me in your next life. Is that so? Qingjiu was a little suspicious. She had reincarnated so early, but he still had to live until the end of his life before reincarnating. He hesitated for a moment before asking, we reincarnated at different times. Will there be a big difference in age? Tangguo, what is in this guy's head? Qingjiu thought of a terrifying possibility. If I didn't come, would you like someone else? When I came, you would have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. What would I do then? System, if you're not of the same mind, you won't enter the same house. That won't happen. It's very difficult for someone to impress me like Iju. There was almost no one who could only love her like this. It was so pure that they could even put down their principles and dignity. Of course, if she could get the person she liked, she would protect his principles and dignity. Even if they liked each other, they should respect each other. If Iju thinks that I'm an old woman and despises me, you can find a young one. But don't ever appear in front of me again. No, why would I find someone else? You're an old woman, and I should be an old man. We're a match made in heaven. System, awareness, this is awareness. No wonder this guy could win the host's heart. Chapter 854. Tangguo was very satisfied. She was happy to hear sweet nothings. She held Qingjiu's hand. After I leave, don't look around blindly. I'm definitely not in the ghost realm. If I say I reincarnated, I'll definitely reincarnate. As long as you're sincere, you'll definitely meet me in your next life. I will. In my next life, I'll find Guoguo first. I won't let anyone get hurt. Tangguo smiled. Ever since she woke up, no one could hurt her anymore. No matter if it was injuries or sadness, no one could make her sad. If something really serious happened, she would at most be a little unhappy for a while. Her biggest emotion now was happiness. The better her mood, the bigger her emotions. Let's go see Feng Tianshi and see how he's doing. Qingjiu was a little surprised. Guoguo can find him. Of course. I was the one who got his soul out. Isn't it easy to find out where he is? In order to let him experience the sad days of being a ghost, I even did a lot of things. For example, he doesn't know that any Daoist with lower cultivation than me can't catch him. At the same time, he doesn't have any abilities. Even those who raise ghosts think he's trash when they meet him. Tang Guo brought Qinzhou to a small town. In a corner of the town, they saw Fong Tianshi with a frightened face. He had just avoided a ghost-catching Daoist and was hiding in the corner, not daring to move at all. It wasn't that he didn't want to find another place, but when he ran over, he didn't notice the sun today. He only felt a piercing pain in his soul. When he stood in the corner, he realized that the sun was everywhere. Only this small place was dark. He was very afraid of the sun. When the sun shone on his body, it would hurt. Although he knew that he wouldn't die from being exposed to the sun. That kind of pain wasn't hard to endure. He realized that his soul wouldn't scatter because of the sun. It was because he was escaping from the pursuit of a Daoist. That Daoist was ferocious. When he saw him, he didn't ask anything and directly attacked him with his sword. In the past, there were many Daoists who wanted to take him in, but they would ask for his name. They would even calculate whether he had done anything bad. In the end, when they saw that he seemed to have a bad aura, they decided to kill him. However, over the years, he had seen a crazy Daoist who would kill any ghost he saw without any regard for cause and effect. Even if it was a weak ghost like him, he would still be able to slash it with his sword. The other party was very strong. In fact, he didn't know how he managed to escape. In short, he was very lucky every time. He was always able to escape from the swords of those Taoists. He didn't like sunlight. When sunlight shone on his soul body, it was too painful. He wouldn't harm anyone. He didn't remember who he was, but he subconsciously felt that he shouldn't harm anyone. At first, when he saw the little ghosts around him being captured, he didn't know why, but he had a feeling that they deserved to be captured. Later on, after living a life of escape every day, he gradually felt that those Taoists were really too annoying. Especially when he clearly didn't do anything bad, nor did he harm anyone, nor did he try to confuse people. However, those Taoist priests were unreasonable, especially that vicious Taoist priest. Those people all called him Master Fong. That vicious aura was even more terrifying than a little brat like him. How could he be called a master? He couldn't understand why these Taoist priests were so unreasonable. They killed every ghost they saw. Chapter 855. Of course, the one with the surname Fong was still the most annoying. Tang Guo stood at the side, holding hands with Qinzhou. She looked at Fong Tianqi's ghost, who seemed to be deep in thought. The sun shone on him, and he hurriedly pressed his legs against the wall. His entire ghost seemed to be stuck to the wall. He doesn't have any memories? Qinzhou asked. Tang Guo smiled. If he had memories, how could he have such an exciting experience? I thought that Guo had already destroyed his soul. At least, with his soul form, he would have been taken away by someone else. For example, he would have been killed by Fong Yunqi. He thought that his ghost wife would be able to take revenge without any pressure. He didn't think that it wouldn't be like that. I'm a person who doesn't care about that. Besides, with such a deliberate plan, they wouldn't understand the pain that their actions have brought to many innocent ghosts. Tang Guo looked at Fong Tianshi, who was still hiding from the sun. Compared to directly destroying them, I think it's more interesting to overturn their outlook on life. The outlook on life that has been established for many years suddenly collapses one day. Who would be able to stand it? She was all smiles, but a cold wind seemed to blow past her. The system trembled. The host was still the same host. Even if she was living in sweet love, she would still do whatever she wanted. Don't expect her to be merciful to her enemies. Then Guo came to find Fong Tianshi today. What plans do you have? Qinzhou could vaguely guess. You want to restore his memories? Tang Guo kissed Qinzhou. Ah, Zhou, you've become smarter. You even know what I want to do. Qingzhou's expression was unnatural. Was he stupid in the past? Tanghua and Qingzhou walked out from the shade of the tree and came in front of Fang Tianshi. At first, Fang Tianshi thought that Qingzhou and Tanghua were just passing by, so he didn't care. He knew that humans couldn't see ghosts unless it was a special occasion. But after a while, he realized that the two of them were looking at him. That's right, they were looking at him. He was shocked, and his expression was nervous. He tiptoed against the wall and looked at the two of them cautiously. You can see me. Yeah. Tanghua nodded. Are you surprised? Fang Tianshi hesitated for a moment before asking, You guys are also ghost hunters. Are you planning to kill me? Moreover, his movements were already showing signs of wanting to run away. It could be seen that he had encountered such situations many times over the years and had already become a subconscious action. Hearing this, Tanghua burst into laughter. Fang Tianshi probably didn't expect that he, a Daoist ghost hunter, would be afraid of a Daoist ghost hunter when he became a ghost. No, I'm not a ghost-catching Taoist, Tanghua said. Neither is he. He's a demon-catching Taoist, not a ghost-catching Taoist. Fang Tianshi heaved a sigh of relief. He thought about it and agreed. If the two of them were here to catch ghosts, they would have charged at him. He didn't know why, but no matter where he went, there would always be Taoists who smelled his scent and said that he had committed too many sins and harmed too many people. They wanted to kill him. He clearly didn't harm anyone, but those Taoist priests said that he had a murderous aura on him. Only murderous ghosts would produce murderous aura. No matter how he explained, those stinky Taoist priests wouldn't listen. Then what are the two of you doing here? Haven't you seen other people in love? Tanghua said with a smile. I'm holding hands with my boyfriend. Of course we're dating and going shopping. Fang Tianshi felt that it was unbelievable. Chapter 856. Fang Tianshi couldn't ask, so he just stood at the foot of the wall and watched the two talk and laugh, as if they were really in a relationship. The doubts in his heart gradually disappeared. These two shouldn't be here to harm him. Over the years, many ghosts he knew had been killed by those stinky Taoists. If he wasn't a little special, he would have been killed by them. I wonder if those Taoists really want to catch ghosts or use the name of catching ghosts to cultivate the Tao of killing. Fang Tianshi thought to himself. Half an hour later, Tanghua and Qingzhou left hand in hand. Tanghua looked at Fang Tianshi and said with a smile, Fang Tianshi, good luck. Fang Tianshi was confused. Fang Tianshi, she was calling him Fang Tianshi, so his name was Fang Tianshi. Did she know him? However, why was his surname Fang? It reminded him of that stinky Taoist called Fang Yunqi. If it wasn't for his good luck, he would have been turned to ashes. Now, when he heard the surname Fang, he felt uncomfortable. Now that he knew his surname was also Fang, he felt very awkward. However, how did that woman know that he was called Fang Tianshi? Just as he was about to chase after her and ask her about it, his mind suddenly became chaotic and he stood there motionless. In a short minute, Fang Tianqi's mind was blank. A minute later, countless images flashed through his mind. These images were his memories. He instantly understood. He squatted in the corner and seriously received the memories. He was a little happy. He had never had his own memories. He had asked the other ghosts and they more or less had their memories when they were alive. He was still very disappointed about this. About 10 minutes later, Fang Tianshi was no longer as happy as he was at the beginning. He was still squatting in the corner with a complicated expression. He stared in the direction that Tanghua left and the aura on his body instantly changed. His appearance also returned to his original appearance. His originally timid temperament suddenly became magnanimous and his face became much more righteous. He didn't look like a ghost at all, but more like a Taoist. He remembered. His name was Fong Tianshi and he had been learning ghost-catching Taoist techniques since he was young. He hated ghosts because their village had been occupied by evil ghosts. In the end, he was the only one left and was picked up by his master. However, he also knew that ghosts that didn't kill people couldn't move. No matter who Gue Sha was, he would care, regardless of karma. At that time, he believed that ghosts should not kill people, regardless of the cause and effect. Therefore, when Tang Lushing found him, he did not hesitate to get rid of the harmful female ghost. Even after he figured out the reason, he didn't feel guilty at all. That ghost had harmed people, so it was not wrong for him to kill it. Later on, he met Tanghua. He thought that he could easily kill this young ghost. He didn't expect that the other party would be able to subdue him so easily. He thought that the other party would directly kill him, the kind where his soul would scatter. However, she only extracted his soul from his body, sealed his memories, and gave him a very special ability. No Taoist priest could kill him. Of course, he also cast a layer of murderous aura on his body. No matter what Taoist priest saw him, they would think that he had killed someone in his ghost form and would not hesitate to attack him. For the next decade or so, he experienced the feeling of being chased by a Taoist priest. Just now, he was complaining that those Taoist priests wanted to kill him without any reason. Chapter 857. Fong Tianshi didn't know how to describe his mood, but it wasn't good. His outlook on life had been overturned by a female ghost. His body had long been buried by Fong Yunqi, and now it was rotten. He was really just a ghost now. Thinking about how Fong Yunqi had chased after him all these years, his expression turned ugly. Also, he knew a few ghosts, and they had a good relationship, but they were all killed by Fong Yunqi. If Tanghua hadn't done something to him, he would have been killed by Fong Yunqi. Fong Tianshi stood in the corner where the sun couldn't reach, thinking about something. Only when the sun went down did he raise his head. He looked at the lights on the street and finally sighed, smiling bitterly. Wrong. He understood. He and Fong Yunqi both thought that as long as they killed ghosts, they would be able to return peace to the human world. He was a little better, as he only killed ghosts. But his disciple, who he raised, became so extreme because of him, killing all kinds of ghosts without distinguishing between right and wrong. All of this was because of his mistake in teaching him. Just like Song Xiaoyun, who was killed by him, he later found out that it was Tang Luxing's new wife who killed her. A dead ghost would definitely want to take revenge. Just like his disciple Fong Yunqi, didn't he want to take revenge on Tanghua because he was killed by Tanghua? Originally, all of this could have been changed. But because of what he did, all of the karma was attached to Fong Yunqi, and in the end, Fong Yunqi walked on his old path, and was even more extreme than him. What could he do now? Fong Tianshi was a little confused, standing in place without moving. What will Fong Tianshi do? Qin Zhou asked curiously. Tanghua shook her head and smiled. Do you think I'm a god? In my heart, a Guogua is a fairy who fell from the sky, more powerful than a god. Tisk, Daoist Qin's sweet talk is getting smoother and smoother. Did you eat honey in your mouth? Qin Zhou smiled and kissed the corner of Tanghua's lips, saying, didn't you just eat honey? Daoist Qin, didn't we agree to only catch ghosts to earn money? Catching ghosts to earn money and spoiling my wife don't conflict. Daoist Qin, you're amazing. You flatter me. I'm really happy to be praised by Guogua. Qin Zhou held Tanghua's hand tightly. Let me carry you, Guogua. I like the way you lean on my back. That way, her entire body would be on top of him, owned by him, and he wouldn't feel that she could float away at any time. Tang Guo lay on his back and wrapped her arms around his neck. The two of them strolled like this, enjoying each other's warmth. Tang Guo almost fell asleep. She was suddenly jolted awake. What jolted her awake was none other than the bead that she had given Ning Xiangxi years ago. What happened? Do you still remember that pearl? A defensive bead for Ning Xiangxi. Ning Xiangxi told me that Master Ming Xian would come looking for me, so I sent him off. Qin Zhou no longer believed her nonsense. She clearly had her own thoughts. What happened? Is it Ning Xiangxi or her daughter, Fang Xiyun? Fang Xiyun. Do you want to go? Qin Zhou was indeed the one who understood her the best. She would definitely go wherever there was excitement. Go, of course I'm going. It's a waste not to watch. Ning Xiangxi couldn't find Fang Xiyun, and no one answered her calls. In the end, she had no choice but to look for Fang Yunqi. Fang Yunqi didn't care at first, but 3 days had passed and Fang Xiyun still hadn't returned. He had no choice but to read Fang Xiyun's fortune. After reading it, his expression changed. Chapter 858. What did you calculate? What happened to Cici? The moment she saw Fang Yunqi's expression change, Ning Xiangxi had a bad premonition. She grabbed Fang Yunqi and hurriedly asked. Seeing that Fang Yunqi's face was dark and he was still calculating, she was so anxious that her eyes turned red. Under normal circumstances, Fang Yunqi wouldn't do it a second time. There must be something wrong, so he had to do it a second time. This was because he did not want to believe the result of the first calculation. Fang Yunqi, tell me, what happened to Cici? Fang Yunqi stopped. Seeing that Ning Xiangxi's tears were flowing, he quickly bit his finger and used the special blood connection method to determine Fang Xiyun's direction. Let's go find Cici immediately. Fang Yunqi only said this one sentence. No matter how Ning Xiangxi asked, he did not say anything. Ning Xiangxi's heart sank. When Fang Yunqi grabbed her, she did not resist. In the current situation, she did not want to make any trouble. Everything could wait until she found her daughter. What happened to Cici? Ning Xiangxi was about to break down. All these years, she had single-handedly raised Fang Xiyun. In her heart, her daughter was actually more important than Fang Yunqi. If something happened to Cici because of your karma, Fang Yunqi, I will never forgive you. Ning Xiangxi regretted. She regretted not listening to the advice of the seniors and not continuing with Fang Yunqi. She was not afraid of karma, but she did not expect that karma might end up with her daughter in the end. If she could do it all over again, she would definitely not be with Fang Yunqi. If you did not hit Cici yesterday, she would not be in trouble. She was sure that something had happened to Fang Xiyun. Otherwise, Fang Yunqi would not have such an expression. Although Fang Yunqi's Dao techniques were good, he could not really fly. The two of them could only drive in a certain direction. When they reached some small roads, they had to walk. As they walked, Ning Xiangxi suddenly froze. Why do I feel like I've been here before? She hurriedly looked at her surroundings, but couldn't recall anything for the time being. But when she walked in front of a big tree, her face turned pale. She only felt that her vision turned black, and she almost fainted. Fang Yunqi quickly hugged her, not letting her fall. Ning Xiangxi looked at that familiar place. It was still that backward and familiar village. She cried out miserably. Why is it still here? Why is it still here? Didn't she cripple all the men here? I really regret it. She regretted stopping Tang Guo back then. Why didn't she let her kill everyone here? That might not be the case. Fang Yunqi held his sword and quickly rushed into the village. He had already sensed Fong Xiyun's aura here. He brought Ning Xiangxi and kicked open a door. Inside were 3 young, strong men and a pale, skinny old woman with almost white hair. Beside the old woman sat a gloomy old man. Facing Fong Yunqi's sudden intrusion, the whole family was very surprised. They all stood up and stared at Fong Yunqi and Ning Xiangxi warily. Fong Yunqi's face was already very old, and the sharp aura around his body made the people in the room not dare to move. Especially when he was dressed as a Daoist, it gave them a great shock. Chapter 859. Although Ning Xiangxi's face had matured a lot compared to 10 years ago, because she knew how to take care of herself, there weren't many changes. When the old woman saw Ning Xiangxi's face, she took a step back in fright. You are Ning Xiangxi. The old woman recognized Ning Xiangxi, but Ning Xiangxi didn't recognize the old woman. At this moment, Tang Gua and Qin Jiu also rushed over. A human and a ghost walked into the house hand in hand. The moment Tang Gua appeared, everyone in the house was trembling. Especially when they saw Tang Gua's smiling face, they were all trembling. The old man instinctively closed his legs, and the 3 strong men's legs were shaking. Seeing that Tang Gua didn't look away and kept staring at them, they were so scared that they peed their pants. Mother, it's that female ghost. Mother, what should we do? It's that female ghost. Tang Gua looked at the old woman and walked forward. The old woman was so scared that she fell to the ground. She thought of something and quickly knelt in front of Tang Gua, her face full of tears. It's my fault, it's all my fault. If you want to kill me, kill me. Let my 3 sons go. Long time no see, Li Meiyun. Back then, you were lucky to escape from here. Later, I heard that people outside helped you without any hesitation. They found a place for you to stay and a job for you. Many people took good care of you. Li Meiyun's lips trembled, but she didn't say anything. But why did you come back? You came back to this barren place and buried you here forever. What do you think those who wanted to be saved but died of despair in the end would think? The system was also shocked. Was this the Li Meiyun who couldn't bear to part with her 3 children back then? Now, you have indeed taken the old path. In order to get wives for your 3 sons, you harmed innocent girls. Li Meiyun couldn't say a word. The old man beside her only looked at Tang Gua in horror, not saying a word. Because Li Meiyun was taken away back then, he chased after her on the same day, so he was the only man in the village who didn't lose his manhood. After that, he finally managed to bring Li Meiyun and his 3 sons back with him after much coaxing. He thought that this female ghost wouldn't come back. After all, more than 10 years had passed. They didn't expect that the female ghost would be attracted by something they had just done. They all regretted it. Among the 3 strong men, the older one still had memories, while the younger one didn't. They had all heard about how terrifying Tang Gua was. Did you guys harm Cici? Ning Xiangxi also remembered Li Meiyun. She rushed in front of Li Meiyun and grabbed her, saying fiercely, "Where's my Cici? Give me back my Cici." Li Meiyun's face turned even paler. What Cici? I don't know. Tell me, where did my Cici go? How could Ning Xiangxi not tell? The other party's eyes were flickering. Cici must have been locked up here before. I really regret it, Li Meiyun. Ning Xiangxi cried painfully. I really shouldn't have been so kind back then. If all of you had died, my Cici wouldn't have been in trouble. Li Meiyun didn't expect that the girl named Fong Xiyun was actually Ning Xiangxi's daughter. She glanced at Fong Yunqi, who was standing beside Ning Xiangxi. She was the Taoist priest's daughter. She really regretted it. If she had known, she wouldn't have tricked that girl. Now, how could they hand her over? Chapter 860. Therefore, no matter what, she could not admit it. At this moment, Fong Yunqi's sword fell on Li Meiyun's neck. The cold touch scared Li Meiyun so much that she fell to the ground. Tell me, where is Fong Siyun? At this moment, Fong Yunqi was full of anger. Li Meiyun panicked and said, She ran away. Where did she run to? Fong Yunqi did not move away. He pressed hard on Li Meiyun's neck, and a bloody mark appeared instantly. Feeling the pain on her neck, Li Meiyun did not dare to hide anything. She explained the cause and effect clearly. It turned out that she saw Fong Siyun in the town at the foot of the mountain. She saw that Fong Siyun looked very lonely. She thought that her 3 sons were all at the age of marrying a wife. It was getting harder and harder to buy a wife now. There were many useless men in the village. If they wanted the village to continue, they were still secretly doing these things. They had always been careful and were more secretive than before. For more than 10 years, no one found out. But even so, the success rate was getting smaller and smaller. Because of the existence of Tanggua and what she did, many people did not dare to do these things anymore. Moreover, young girls nowadays were not easy to fool. If they felt something was wrong, they would immediately leave. Few of the boys who grew up in the village had wives. Even if they were lucky and bought or cheated, they did not dare to torture or even kill people like in the past. However, in order to continue the village, they would take turns to give birth to children for the men in the village. They were afraid of being found out and causing the tragedy in the past. When some girls gave birth, they did not dare to send them to the hospital. In the end, they died. This time, when she saw Fong Siyun, she had not seen such a beautiful girl for a long time. She wanted to trick her back and give her 3 sons. Fong Siyun heard her say that the scenery in the village was good, but she was absent-minded. After she persuaded her, she finally agreed to come up. As soon as she came up, she was controlled by them. They did not dare to torture her anymore. They took good care of her. Every day, they tried to persuade Fong Siyun, hoping that she would agree. It was not easy for Fong Siyun to give in. When they relaxed, she actually ran away. She was not familiar with the road, so she ran up the mountain. They did not expect Fong Siyun to be so stubborn that she jumped down without thinking. They wanted to stop her, but it was too late. In the end, they could only go home anxiously and close the door. They were very uneasy because there was once a very powerful female ghost who jumped down from that cliff. They were very afraid. What if Fong Siyun also became a powerful female ghost and came back to kill them and kill all the people in the village? They had never thought that Fong Yunqi would appear at this time and kick their door open, giving them no time to prepare. What made them even more afraid? Of that powerful female ghost, the female ghost. When Ning Xiangxi heard this, she was already sobbing. She said that she regretted it and hurriedly asked Tanggua, "Can you take me to that cliff?" "Let's go," Tanggua said. She looked at the family and smiled faintly. She shook her head. She had already given Li Meiyun a chance. So many people wanted to help her was a waste. She had nothing to say to this kind of person. She didn't want to do anything. Chapter 861. This matter was related to Fong Yunqi. She wanted to see what Fong Yunqi wanted to do. "Xiangxi, go and find Cici first. I still need to ask them some things." Ning Xiangxi didn't think too much about it. She just followed Tanggua to the cliff. "Miss Tang, can you walk faster? What if Cici is still alive?" Ning Xiangxi's face was full of tears. "If only I didn't stop you back then. It's all my fault." All these years, she had been doing charity work every month to help Fong Yunqi get rid of the karma. However, the karma still landed on her daughter. Even if the karma landed on her, it was fine. Cece was still so young. The more she thought about it, the more Ning Xiangxi couldn't forgive herself. She couldn't forgive herself for stubbornly wanting to be with Fang Yunqi. If she wasn't with Fang Yunqi, would Cece not have encountered all these? Tang Guo flew faster and said, as long as Fang Xiyun is Fang Yunqi's daughter, she wouldn't have landed here today. She would have landed somewhere else. Ning Xiangxi was speechless. That was right. That was the most complicated karma. She wiped her tears and quickly climbed up the mountain. Soon, she arrived at the cliff. This was also the place where the original owner had fallen. Ning Xiangxi wasn't afraid of heights at all. She stood at the edge of the dangerous cliff and looked down. How should I go down to find Cece? I'll bring you down. Tang Guo said. Since she was already here, she wanted to see what happened to her body. System, dear host, Fang Yunqi's system was hesitant. Tang Guo found it funny. What are you trying to say? Fang Yunqi killed all the members of that family. The system had expected this, but it also felt that Fang Yunqi had double standards. He always said that ghosts hurt people, but he never cared about people hurting people. Now that things had happened to him, he had no choice but to kill people with his own hands. So, what was Fang Yunqi's persistence for all these years? Oh, that's expected. Tang Guo wasn't surprised. Many people were kind to others and spoke of justice. They believed that everything had to be done according to the rules. However, there were many things that did not happen to them at all. When such a terrible thing happened to them, they would be crazier than anyone else. When Tang Guo was about to take Ning Xiangxi down, Fang Yunqi rushed up. Acacia. Fang Yunqi's body still reeked of blood. I'll take you down to find Cece. Ning Xiangxi did not resist and allowed Fang Yunqi to hug her. She did not expect anything from the man beside her. She only prayed that Fang Xiyun was still alive. As long as Fang Xiyun was still alive, she would raise Fang Xiyun alone for the rest of her life. As for Fang Yunqi, she was a little tired. She couldn't afford to love this man anymore. She was afraid that if she continued to be entangled with him, all sorts of terrifying things would happen to her Cece for the rest of her life. Fang Yunqi did not know what Ning Xiangxi was thinking. He held the sword in one hand and scraped the wall of the cliff, bringing Ning Xiangxi down. Tang Guo and Qin Jiu also jumped down together. Qin Jiu knew about the defensive pearl and naturally understood that Fang Xiyun's life would not be in danger. He looked at Tang Guo's nonchalant expression and smiled. He kissed her cheek. Do what? I want to kiss you. This is called being a hooligan in public. Qin Jiu laughed softly and kissed her again. Chapter 862. His Guoguo was really too likable. He liked how casual she was. No matter what she did it based on her heart. She would not find a reason to do anything except for revenge. What a coincidence. Tang Guo looked at Fang Xiyun, who was hanging on the cliff. It happened to be where her body used to be. She could not help but say, the place where I used to live. System, the host is probably going to die of laughter. Fang Xiyun was already in a daze. At that time, she hardened her heart and jumped down. When she felt the feeling of falling, she thought that she would not be able to survive. In the midst of the rapid fall, she saw a stone protruding out. At that time, she thought that this sharp stone would definitely pierce through her body and kill her. However, she did not expect that the stone did not pierce through her body. It only hung on her clothes. At that time, she noticed that the bead on her neck flashed. This ordinary-looking bead was given to her by her mother. Since she was young, she had worn it on her neck and told her not to take it off. She was not allowed to take it off even when she was bathing. Once, when the weather was hot, she wanted to take the bead off and made Ning Xiangxi angry. Ning Xiangxi had been with her since she was young. The thing she hated the most was seeing Ning Xiangxi angry. She promised that she would never take it off again. Ning Xiangxi told her and her father that she bought this bead. She thought it looked good, so she let her wear it. However, she felt that Ning Xiangxi's attitude towards this bead was not what she said. Today, when she was hanging on the cliff, she finally understood that this bead was not simple. It could be said that it had saved her life. However, if she was hanging here, who would know that she was here? The stone had passed through the back of her clothes. She was afraid that she would starve to death here. When people outside found her, she would probably be dried up by the wind. The weather was still very hot. The sun shone down. She was thirsty and tired. She fell asleep in a daze. When she was almost awake, she heard a very pleasant voice saying, "What a coincidence, and the place where I used to live." She opened her eyes, wanting to find the person who had spoken. In reality, she thought that she was dreaming or hearing things. However, she still wanted to live. She should not have listened to that old woman. Otherwise, this would not have happened. Cece. When Ning Xiangxi saw Fang Xiyun hanging from a rock with her hands hanging by her side, her heart skipped a beat. Tears immediately flowed out of her eyes. However, when she saw Fang Xiyun move, she cried out in surprise. "Mother!" Fang Xiyun really thought she was dreaming this time, but she still raised her head and saw Ning Xiangxi and Fang Yunqi approaching her. She was so happy that she wanted to shout. As soon as she raised her hand, she heard the sound of her clothes being torn apart, and her body fell straight down. Fang Yunqi and Ning Xiangxi did not expect this. No matter how fast Fang Yunqi was, he could not catch up. Ning Xiangxi shouted anxiously, "No!" Tanggua sneered and waved her hand at the place where Fang Xiyun fell. Fang Xiyun's body slowly floated up. She heard that sneer. She looked up and saw Tanggua and Qinzhou. "So, what's the use of being a ghost-catching Taoist? You're not even as useful as me." Tanggua let Fang Xiyun float beside her as she said, "We are fated to meet." Chapter 863. Fang Xiyun blinked her eyes. She was still wondering if this beautiful woman was a ghost. She glanced at Fang Yunqi subconsciously. He didn't look too good, but he didn't say anything. When he saw her, he heaved a sigh of relief. "That place, I was once hung there, exposed to the elements for many years." Tanggua pointed to the place where Fang Xiyun was hanging just now. "But I'm dead, and you're alive." Ning Xiangxi also heaved a sigh of relief. She looked at Tanggua with gratitude in her eyes. If it wasn't the right time, she would have hugged Fang Xiyun and cried. They floated to the top of the cliff. Ning Xiangxi quickly broke free from Fang Yunqi and hugged Fang Xiyun tightly. "Cece, are you okay? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" "Mom, I'm fine." Fang Xiyun knew that she was in the wrong this time. "I'm sorry to have made you worry. I won't run away from home in the future." She glanced at Fang Yunqi and lowered her head again. She didn't want to talk to him. She would always remember those 2 slaps. Her father abandoned his wife and children in order to catch ghosts. Just because she said that a ghost was good, he slapped her twice. Fang Yunqi, as her father, had never picked her up from school. He also didn't attend her parent-teacher meetings. He also didn't ask about her homework. In her father's eyes, there was only catching ghosts and killing ghosts. Since that was the case, why did she still need such a father? Cece, Mom only wants you in the future. Facing the daughter that she had lost and regained, Ning Xiangxi understood everything. It was time for that relationship to end. It was time for her and Fang Yunqi to end. She touched the bead around Fang Xiyun's neck. Looking at the crack on the bead, her eyes turned red. It was this bead that saved you. Mom, what is this bead? Cece, this bead was given to you by Miss Tang. Ning Xiangxi hurriedly said to Fang Xiyun, Miss Tang said that I would have a daughter and gave this bead to you. Fang Xiyun hesitated for a moment and looked at Tang Guo. Is it this Miss Tang? Yes. Ning Xiangxi said hurriedly with a smile on her face. She's the legendary ghost. Fang Xiyun's eyes widened. There wasn't fear in her eyes, but surprise. She stared at Tang Guo, unable to take her eyes off her. If Ning Xiangxi hadn't held her, she would have rushed to Tang Guo. She really saw the female ghost in the legends. She touched the cracked bead and looked at Tang Guo as she said, Thank you. You're welcome. I gave it to you as a gift back then. Tang Guo smiled. I didn't expect you to be so lucky. Ning Xiangxi did not believe that it was a casual gift. She had actually thought it through. Regardless of whether Tang Guo could compete with Master Mingxian or not, if she had not informed the other party, this bead would not have fallen into Fang Xiyun's hands. Then today, Fang Xiyun might die. Even if she didn't die, she would encounter many bad things. It was precisely because her mind suddenly became clear at that time and she made that decision that Tang Guo decided to give this bead to her and pointed it to Fang Xiyun. So, this ghost was really powerful. It was normal that Fang Yunqi couldn't win. If it was really an ordinary ghost, would it be able to see things that happened more than 10 years later, and it was about her daughter? Miss Tang, no matter what, thank you very much. Ning Xiangxi and Fang Xiyun bowed to Tang Guo. Chapter 864. Cece and I will always remember you. If you need anything or need beautiful clothes, you can come to us. We will burn them for you regularly. Ning Xiangxi was still embarrassed when she said this. But she had indeed seen Qin Jiu take Tang Guo to the mall to buy clothes and burn them for her. Mom, is she the legendary female ghost? Fang Xiyun asked uncertainly. After receiving Ning Xiangxi's confirmation, she finally smiled. Fang Xiyun hesitated for a moment and asked Tang Guo, Auntie Tang, can I take a photo with you? Cece, don't mess around. Ning Xiangxi quickly stopped her. Tang Guo said, okay. Fang Xiyun happily broke free from Ning Xiangxi and insisted that Ning Xiangxi take a photo of her. Seeing that Tang Guo didn't object, Ning Xiangxi also took out her phone to take a photo of them. Qin Jiu also let go of Tang Guo. When Fang Xiyun saw that Tang Guo's body had solidified, her eyes were filled with curiosity. She said very seriously, Auntie Tang, you're amazing. When I was very young, I often heard stories about you. I never thought that I would see you in person one day. She also didn't expect that the person who saved her life was actually a ghost. The funny thing was that her father was a ghost hunter who killed ghosts whenever he saw one. She glanced at Fang Yunqi, whose face was pale, and took a few photos with Tang Guo intimately. Ning Xiangxi saw that Fang Yunqi was uncomfortable and even saw that he was staring at Tang Guo. If they weren't here, he would probably have hit her. If it was before today, her heart would ache. But now, forget it. In Ning Xiangxi's eyes, there was only her daughter in her heart. Xiangxi, don't let Cece mess around. Fang Yunqi felt very complicated. On one hand, Tang Guo was his enemy who killed his master. On the other hand, Fang Xiyun was saved by her. Fang Xiyun was so close to Tang Guo, which made him very angry. Ning Xiangxi sneered at Fang Yunqi. What happened between Cici and me has nothing to do with you from now on. Fang Yunqi, go and catch your ghosts. No one will stop you or blame you for being irresponsible in the future. Xiangxi, what do you mean? Ning Xiangxi put down her phone and sneered. What else could it mean? Divorce, Fang Yunqi, I want to divorce you. In the future, you can do whatever you want. Cici and I have nothing to do with you. No one will stop you. You can go wherever you want to catch ghosts. No, Xiangxi. We're definitely getting a divorce. Ning Xiangxi was determined this time. Do you think that what happened to our daughter today has nothing to do with you? Regardless of the cause and effect, if you hadn't slapped Cici twice that day, she wouldn't have run away from home. Fang Yunqi hurriedly explained, that's because she's young and immature. I hit her because, isn't it just because she said something about ghosts not being evil and poked your sore spot? Ning Xiangxi sneered. She held Fang Xiyun, who had returned to her side, and asked Fang Xiyun seriously, Cici, do you object to me divorcing your father? I don't object. Fang Xiyun said with certainty, all these years, he has only been at home for a few days. Mom, I support you. Without him, we can still live. I've always felt that the legendary Auntie Tang is a good ghost. He hit me because of this. He has never fulfilled his responsibilities as a husband and father. Why should we keep him? Ning Xiangxi's heart relaxed. Seeing that Tang Guo was still beside them, she said, I've embarrassed myself in front of you. Chapter 865. Later, Ning Xiangxi and Fang Yunqi divorced. Fang Yunqi didn't agree at first, but later, Ning Xiangxi took Fang Xiyun and left their house. Ning Xiangxi bought a new villa with a perfect security system. He talked to her, and she said that if they didn't get a divorce, she would never see him again. Ning Xiangxi said to him again, think about it, Fang Yunqi. You've done all your evil deeds to your daughter. Fang Yunqi, I beg you, let's get a divorce. I can't bear anything happening to Cici. We won't be so lucky every time. Tang Guo will give our Cici a life-saving bead. Fang Yunqi didn't agree at first, but once, when Fang Xiyun came home from school, she was hit by a car that rushed over and knocked into the air. If it weren't for the bead, her life might have been in danger. He also saw that there was another crack on the bead. Ning Xiangxi held the bead and cried as she said to Fang Yunqi, did you see that? I don't know how long this bead can last. Fang Yunqi, do you want to kill our daughter? Fang Yunqi had no choice but to believe it this time. For the first time, he doubted whether he was wrong. During the few days he hesitated, Fang Xiyun had all kinds of accidents. Although there was no more crack on the bead, those small accidents brought a lot of trouble to Fang Xiyun's life. Looking at the scar on Fang Xiyun's arm, he finally compromised and divorced Ning Xiangxi. Ever since the divorce, Fang Xiyun didn't have any problems. When he knew this, Fang Yunqi was a little stunned. He looked at the little ghost under his sword and gritted his teeth. He still wanted to cut it down. Yunqi, stop. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded, causing Fang Yunqi to be stunned. He looked up and saw Fang Tianshi floating towards him. Master, Master. Master, is that you? Fang Yunqi said in surprise, but he soon felt that something was wrong. Master, are you a ghost? Fang Tianshi looked pained. I'm a ghost. Why? Are you going to kill me? No, Master, why would I kill you? I can't kill you. No matter how much he hated ghosts, he wouldn't kill his master. Yunqi, you saw that I was a ghost, but you didn't kill me. Then why did you kill all the other ghosts? Fang Yunqi threw down his sword, because they are all harming people. Master won't harm people. Fong Tianche's expression was filled with regret. Yunqi, put down the sword in your hand. Don't be a ghost-catching Taoist anymore. This is all my fault. I've led you onto a path of no return. Fong Yunqi shook his head. No, Master, there are still many ghosts in this world that I need to catch. Yunqi. Fong Tianche shouted loudly and changed his appearance. Fong Yunqi's eyes widened. Wasn't this the ghost that he wanted to kill every time, but couldn't in the end? Fong Tianche changed back to his original appearance and told Fong Yunqi the original story. Do you know that for the past 10 years, your master has escaped from your hands several times a year? Master, it's all that female ghost's fault. Otherwise, I wouldn't have failed to recognize you. Fong Tianche didn't know what to say. You can't tell right from wrong. I know many ghost friends who didn't do anything. They were all killed by you. Fong Yunqi took a step back. He looked like he was about to break down. No. He turned around and ran as if he had gone crazy. Chapter 866. Fong Tianche and Fong Yunqi's conversation was witnessed by Tang Guo and Qin Zhou not far away. When she saw Fong Yunqi's worldview crumble, her lips curled up. She looked very happy. That smile was a little naughty and full of vengeance. Qin Zhou inadvertently caught a glimpse of it and was mesmerized by her. Fong Yunqi's cultivation is ruined. Qin Zhou said. Once his Tao heart is broken, he can't take another step forward in this life. He can't catch ghosts anymore. Of course, Fong Yunqi brought all of this upon himself. He held Tang Guo's hand tightly. Guo Guo, let me take you to the mall. There should be new beautiful dresses coming out this month. Okay. Tang Guo could feel the fear and reluctance in Qin Zhou's heart. She wrapped her arms around his waist. Don't be afraid. You will meet me in your next life. As long as you are obedient and don't make any mistakes, we can still be together. Qin Zhou didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He touched her face. I will try my best not to make any mistakes. He was afraid that he, who had lost his memories, would really hurt her. What if his next life was a different person from hers? Wouldn't that be impossible? Qin Zhou took Tang Guo to the mall and personally picked out the most beautiful dress for her. After being with her for so many years, his taste had become more and more experienced. He didn't need Tang Guo's guidance to be able to find the best way to match her clothes. The way he picked out clothes and matched them made the salesgirls especially amazed. They were already very familiar with this man in Taoist robes. He would always come to their mall to buy beautiful clothes. However, they had never seen a woman by his side. They had also asked him who he was buying these beautiful clothes for. At that time, he would give them a warm smile. My wife. When he talked about his wife, the gentle and doting smile on his face really warmed their hearts. Of course, they didn't know that the wife he was talking about was actually standing by his side, looking at him with a serious and focused gaze. He liked her gaze too much. From those beautiful eyes, he could clearly see that he was the only one inside. This gaze made him addicted, intoxicated, and lost himself in it. He didn't want to wake up. She said that she wanted to leave, and from her tone, he could tell that she really had no way to stay. He bought a lot of clothes and burned them in front of her tomb for her. Looking at the clothes on her body that were constantly changing, he smiled from the bottom of his heart. Seeing her happy look, he was also very happy. More than a year later, Tang Guo left this world. When she left, Qin Zhou was meditating and cultivating. When he opened his eyes, he felt that his body was empty, and so was his heart. That familiar aura was no longer there. He sat on the hillside and stared blankly at the endless mountain peaks in the distance. After that, he closed his eyes again and continued to cultivate. Occasionally, when he went out to train, he would casually take care of some innocent girls who had been abducted. He would only send them to the police and then leave them with a lonely back view. Later, people gradually discovered that the mysterious female ghost had disappeared, but there seemed to be a Taoist priest who liked to meddle in other people's business. It was said that this Taoist was a demon-catching Taoist, and he had saved countless people. In the next few decades, he was still around. Once, a girl who had been saved looked at Qin with adoration. When he left, she said, "Why didn't you give me a chance?" Chapter 867. I've never been a meddlesome person, Qin said coldly without turning his head. The girl couldn't help but say, "But you meddled." "That's because she likes it." Qin cold face warmed up. "I'm just doing what she likes." "Who is she?" "My lover." The girl's face was filled with loneliness. "Where is she?" "She's not here anymore." Qin looked at the sky and raised his hand with a smile. He covered his heart with his hand. "But she's never disappeared from my heart. She's always been here. Until the end of my life, she won't disappear." The girl finally gave up. "Then she's really lucky." "No, I'm the lucky one. I met her." Qin held his sword and took a step into the distance, but his figure was already far away. Later, he met Fang Yunqi. Fang Yunqi lost his cultivation and went crazy. Fang Tianshi had always been by Fang Yunqi's side. A ghost and a lunatic, what a strange combination. He occasionally heard news about Ning Xiangxi and Fang Xiyun. Ning Xiangxi became the most famous philanthropist in the country, but she kept a low profile and was very respected. Fang Xiyun later set up a women's rescue organization, which specialized in saving girls who were accidentally abducted. 100 years later, the world was filled with sunshine. Qin broke the barrier between the ghost world and the human world. He searched for a long time in the ghost world, but he couldn't find Tangguo. In the end, he went to the reincarnation pool in the ghost world. Under the horrified gaze of the ghost cultivators, he jumped down with a smile. Tangguo looked at herself. From her fair and slender wrists, she could tell that this body was very young. She opened the curtain and got up. A palace servant was kneeling beside the bed. Seeing her wake up, they lowered their heads. "Your Majesty, are you awake?" Tangguo replied softly. Her natural dignity made the palace servant lower their heads even more. "Your Majesty, do you need some food? Bring some over." She also felt a little hungry. It was best to eat while recalling the plot. She was dressed by the palace servant. Standing in front of the mirror, she looked at her body. Of course, she was very good-looking. Because she was still young, her face looked a little young and tender. This body was about 15 years old. According to the palace servant, she should be the empress of a country. He just didn't know what her current status was or what the situation in the court was like. When the sumptuous food was served, she dismissed everyone and began to eat while recalling the plot of this world. At this moment, the system also appeared excitedly. "Host, oh, no, Your Majesty, this time you are the empress. I just browsed through the storyline. You have a harem of beauties." Tangguo's hand that was holding the chopsticks paused. "Is it a lot?" There were a lot of them. I counted, and there should be about 30 to 40 of them. However, it seemed that this body was only 15 years old, so it wasn't the right time to visit them yet. The system was secretly excited. Also, this was a world where women ruled the world. Tangguo raised her eyebrows but was not surprised. She took a bite of the food and asked, is it the kind where a man gives birth? System, he's a bit confused. Why is the host focusing on the wrong thing? That's not it. Oh. The lack of interest made the system very depressed. Did it have to be like this? Chapter 868. Dear host, maybe we'll transmigrate to a world where men give birth. Don't be disappointed. Let's accumulate some experience this time. I'm not disappointed, I'm just asking. I've read a lot of books before. Don't all men have to give birth in a female-dominated world? I've always been curious, where do they come from? And the structure of male and female reproductive organs are different. How do women impregnate men? How did such a big egg end up in a man's stomach? The system was stunned. Yeah, how did such a big egg end up in a man's stomach? It doesn't make sense. It said weakly, maybe, in the female-dominated world where men give birth, a woman's egg is only as big as a normal man's sperm. How can a man's sperm be as big as an egg? Then how do they give birth? Don't tell me there's a female reproductive organ in their body structure. If that's the case, they're not men, but intersex. System, a little dizzy. Tangua smiled, feeling the system's confusion. Don't think about it, you won't be able to figure it out even if you think about it. But the system was still confused. So, how did an egg end up in a man's stomach? How did a man give birth to a child? The more it thought about it, the scarier it became. I've received the memory. Tangua said, then ate her food and stopped talking to the system. She let the system ponder over how a man gave birth to a child. In this world, only women were respected. The other biological structures were the same, so she didn't care about it at all. Even if it was different, she didn't have to worry about it. She wouldn't have a child anyway. The country she ruled was called West Saint Empire, a country where women were respected. However, in the other countries on this continent, men were still the most respected. This was also why the biological structures of men and women were normal. Because a long time ago, West Saint Empire wasn't ruled by women, but by men. Later on, the women were oppressed for too long. Finally, a heavenly genius woman appeared and ruled over the West Saint Nation, which was already in internal strife. Of course, the name West Saint Nation was also given later on. Her body was indeed only 15 years old. In West Saint Empire, 16 years old was considered an adult. As the Empress, she needed to be an adult before she could have a concubine. But before that, as the Empress, she couldn't avoid taking in a lot of people to balance the power in the harem. The original owner ascended the throne at 10 years old and was a very outstanding Empress. Her only shortcoming was that she was too young. But the strength left to her by the previous Empress was enough to wait for her to grow up. However, something happened while she was growing up. Everything that happened later led to the premature death of this talented young Empress. Her death wasn't an accident, but a murder. The people who had plotted against her were the men in her harem and her own sister, Tang Nuyu, the Moon Prince of the West Saint Nation. But to be exact, this Tang Nuo, Empress. Because Empress, Im Empress, Tang Empress, Im Empress, Im Empress. To Im Empress, T, S Im Empress, Empress Chapter 869. Especially this kind of person who had been stupid for more than 10 years, suddenly became a normal person. As long as the Empress was not crazy, she would definitely send people to monitor her. At this time, Tang Nuyu's husband, as well as some people who found Tang Nuyu very interesting, secretly told Tang Nuyu that the Empress sent people to monitor her. This made Tang Nuyu afraid of the Empress from the beginning, and even thought of many schemes and tricks in her mind. Those men with ulterior motives approached Tang Nuyu step by step, and also designed all kinds of weaknesses of the Empress to harm Tang Nuyu. Even the crime of Tang Nuyu's original stupidity was put on the Empress. In fact, Tang Nuyu was born stupid, and did not care about the Empress at all. But those men, in order to achieve their goal of overthrowing the West Saint nation that respected women, used Tang Nuyu, this naive and sweet girl, and used Tang Nuyu to openly deal with the young Empress. The Empress's harem, Tang Nuyu's harem, the sons of some ministers in the court, and spies from the neighboring countries, all joined in this conspiracy. The Empress noticed that something was wrong, but it was too late. These men were all very smart, and when they joined forces, how could she, a 15-year-old Empress, deal with them? Especially, the people around her were also controlled by these men. Tang Nuyu thought that those men really loved her. In addition, the men had shown her a lot of evidence that the Empress wanted to kill her. So, she let them plot these, and waited for the dream of being the Empress in the future, and hugging left and right. She did succeed, and she became the most noble Empress. But she also failed, and on the night of her ascension, when she was with her husbands, she was pierced through the heart by a sword. Those men showed their true faces, and they all mocked her naivety, ridiculous. Tang Nuyu heard their original plan from the mouths of these men, and died with hatred. She hated these men who played with her feelings. And the West Saint nation also came to an end, divided by these men, once again becoming chaotic. Neither the Empress nor Tang Nuyu knew what happened after that. Dear host, how do you feel about this world? The system asked, have you ever thought of trying another man? Your cutie might not be around. Tangua didn't say anything. The system continued to sow discord between them. Wouldn't it be boring to eat the same thing all the time? It was actually not bad to have a change of taste. Tongzi, you just want to watch the show. Are you in love and want to find a female system? Alright, next time we meet a female system, we'll tie her up and do whatever you want to her. Host, it's not like that. Just pretend that I didn't say anything. The system was a little scared. What female system? It had no such thoughts at all. Two strings of data falling in love, it didn't think it was fun at all. Compared to finding a partner, he still hoped to find a system that he could eat in one bite and help him level up. Even if the other party was a girl, he would still choose to eat her. Leveling up was more important than finding a partner. Tangua ate her food slowly. I'll make a few lists. Help me monitor them and see what they're doing. Host, please instruct. Nan Yunchuan, Su Qing, Shan Gu, Yin Qiu, Xiao Jin. These 5 men were the main culprits of the conspiracy. Among them, Nan Yunchuan and Su Qing were both people in her harem. Su Qing was Tang Nuyu's husband, Yin Qiu was the young master of Tang Nuyu's residence, and Xiao Jin was a hostage sent by the state of Qi. Xiao Jin was a person with strategy and means. He joined mainly to borrow the power of the West Saint nation to help him take back the state of Qi. Chapter 870. Xiao Jin was also the man that Tang Nuyu liked the most. However, it was this ruthless person who stabbed Tang Nuyu to death with a knife, causing Tang Nuyu's heart to break. After Tangua said the names, the system had already monitored the men. With the increase in energy, he could now cover more and more places. It was not a problem to cover 2 or 3 cities at the moment, not to mention the range of the Imperial City and the Imperial Palace. Tangguo first looked at her harem for a while. Nan Yunchuan was drinking tea in the palace and playing chess alone. This was his hobby. This guy had a lot of schemes and tricks, and his stomach was full of bad water. Su Qing was playing the zither, and there was a bit of worry between her brows. However, the cold light that flashed through her eyes was really shocking. When she was about to turn the scene away, she saw a man practicing swordsmanship in a slightly more luxurious palace. She did not look away. She narrowed her eyes and stared at the man. Then, she said to the system, "Zoom in, I want to take a closer look at this guy." "Okay, host." When she saw this handsome face, Tang Guo found the other party's identity from her memory. This body's imperial husband, Jing Qing. He was a real man who liked to play with swords and guns. He had longed to go out and fight since he was young. However, his status was noble. In the end, he was chosen to become the Empress of the West Holy Kingdom, which was her body's imperial husband. It was not that men could not be officials, but it was 100 times more difficult than women to be officials. It was not that they could not join the army, but it was still very difficult to be promoted. In addition, after ruling for thousands of years, women were getting stronger and stronger. The imperial court had long been dominated by women, and there were more and more women in the army, and they were getting stronger and stronger. Men were getting weaker and weaker, marginalized, and their status was getting lower and lower. Gradually, they did not leave the house and were raised as daughters. Some men were even raised as delicate grass, the kind that would fall when the wind blew. However, most of those were small families. But some women liked those delicate grass, teasing them and treating them as playthings. It was similar to how men treated women in the world of men, except that the gender was changed. "Host, is there a problem with this imperial husband, Jing Qing?" the system asked curiously. Tang Guo smiled. "There's no problem. I just think that he looks especially handsome when he's wielding his sword." The system was horrified. Was it? "My dear host is really going to fall in love with someone else." "Bah, that's not right. The great host doesn't remember the past. He was actually a little handsome." The system hurriedly praised. "Alright, turn the camera to Tang Nuyu. At this time, she should have transmigrated here. Let's see what the people in her residence are doing." As for Tang Nuyu, in this story, she was at most a little stupid. However, the intelligence of those men was indeed very high. They were all experts in scheming. Tang Nuyu was a modern woman who had just graduated from university and had not experienced any hardships. Suddenly, she was in a different place. She had to live in fear all day long. Suddenly, a few elegant men appeared. They talked sweet nothings to her all day long and looked at her with adoration. Which woman wouldn't be moved? Step by step, she fell into the trap of these men. As a modern woman, how could she have expected the ancient people to be so scheming? So, in the end, she was still a pitiful person. She was just a tool used by these scary men. Chapter 871. When the camera turned to Tang Nuyu's house, Tang Guo was stunned when she saw a certain scene. The system sensed Tang Guo's surprise and stared at it. It was also stunned. "Dear host, what's going on? Things don't look good." The system was saying that according to the plot, Tang Nuyu shouldn't be treating Yin Qiu like this at this time, right? Tang Guo looked at Yin Qiu kneeling under the sun. His face was pale and there were whip marks on his body. She narrowed her eyes. She could tell that he had been kneeling for a long time. "Look at Tang Nuyu." The system followed her instructions and turned the camera to Tang Nuyu's house. When they saw Tang Nuyu, the two of them suddenly realized something. Especially when they heard Tang Nuyu's soft and hateful mutterings, they understood what was going on. "Since I, Tang Nuyu, have been reborn, I won't fall for the tricks of you men." Tang Nuyu looked at the mirror. Her face was pale and there was a loneliness after despair in her eyes. "If you want to overthrow the West Saint Nation, you have to see if I, Tang Nuyu, agree. In this life, as long as I, Tang Nuyu, am here, you men can kneel under a woman's skirt. But how am I going to tell the Empress this now? I used to be a fool. If I say this rashly, the Empress won't believe me and will suspect that I have ulterior motives. Tang Nuyu fell into deep thought. It seems that I still have to use those men to achieve my goal. It's best to let the Empress discover those men's goal herself. Maybe I can first feign civility with those men and infiltrate their inner circle. They think that I'm easy to fool. Finally, I'll work with the Empress from the inside and see if we can't kill them. Tang Guo laughed when she saw this. That's fun. I'm starting to like this Tang Nuyu. Actually, it's not that troublesome. If she says it, I'll just go with the flow. However, according to her experience, she should be careful and take every step carefully because she has already died twice. The second time, she was killed by a man's scheme. It's time for her to grow up. Tang Nuyu giggled in front of the mirror until her face was cramping. This time, I must hug the Empress's thigh tightly. If those men hadn't lied to me in my previous life, how could such a smart and capable girl like the Empress lose? Men are all pigs. I must have been possessed to believe their sweet nothings. Tang Nuyu pursed her lips. And that Xiao Jin, I'm going to kill him in this life. Tang Guo laughed as she watched. She was overjoyed. Keep an eye on Tang Nuyu too. See what she's doing. I'll send 2 people over in 2 days to help her secretly. After Tang Nuyu finished her giggling, she turned around and skipped out of the room with the whip. Looking at Tang Nuyu's silly performance, Tang Guo almost spat. You're good at pretending. You have a bright future. Tang Nuyu waved the whip in front of Yin Qiu. Yin Qiu's body trembled subconsciously. When he saw Tang Nuyu smiling at him foolishly, he felt his hair stand on end. Is it fun? Yin Qiu, this prince is here to play with you. Huh, play with the whip. Let's play with the whip. Then, Tang Guo saw Yin Qiu's face turn pale and hopeless. He wanted to escape. Unfortunately, Tang Nuyu's people were all loyal to her. If the prince wanted to play, they would definitely not let this lowly servant escape. The 2 of them held down Yin Qiu. Tang Nuyu's eyes flashed with excitement. She laughed happily and raised the whip to whip Yin Qiu. Haha, fun, fun. Yin Qiu, you're so fun. Tang Nuyu's heart at this time, stinky man, how dare you plot against me? I'll beat you to death. Chapter 872. Slap. Slap. The sound of the whip hitting the ground rang out intermittently, accompanied by Yin Qiu's groans. His arms were pressed down by 2 strong women, and he was unable to resist at all. Even if he wanted to resist, he did not dare to. In the Moon King's residence, he was only a servant of the idiot Moon King. If he dared to be disrespectful to the Moon King, he did not know how the people left behind by the late emperor would torture him. He hated this idiot very much, but he still had to pretend to be miserable and stubborn on the surface. Tang Nuyu looked at Yin Qiu's pitiful, unloving appearance. She mocked him in her heart and wanted to laugh out loud. This man gave people the feeling that he had a pitiful background and made people pity him. In the past, when she heard about Yin Qiu's background, although she did not like Yin Qiu the most, she treated him well. In the end, when she was stabbed by Xiao Jin, she only saw mockery and ridicule on Yin Qiu's face. Yin Qiu's words to her were also heart-wrenching. Who do you think you are to like this young master? If it was not for the sake of achieving great things, why would this young master lower himself to you, stupid woman? At that time, she could not see her facial expression, but she thought that her eyeballs must have popped out and she must have looked very ugly. She was stupid and muddle-headed. Of course, after experiencing life and death this time, she was very clear about what kind of person she was. She was stupid and selfish. Wasn't this human instinct? She was just an ordinary person without any noble character. Last time, she was schemed to death by them. That was because she was stupid, because she did not understand people's hearts. She deserved it. Now, she would only choose the direction that was beneficial to her and take revenge at the same time. Since the heavens gave her another choice, she would not waste this opportunity. She would properly settle the score with these stinky men. What the hell was love? These men had already told her clearly that it was useless and could even kill people. The more she thought, the angrier she became, and the harder she whipped Eunchio's body. In the end, Eunchio fainted from the pain. She had a silly smile on her face as she whipped the corpse-like Eunchio. Eunchio, why are you sleeping like that? Quickly get up and play with this prince. Whoa, Eunchio won't play with this prince anymore. Eunchio, quickly get up and play with this prince. The people sent by the late emperor to the Tang Nuyu would of course do things according to their master's wishes. They turned around and brought a bucket of cold water, intending to splash Eunchio awake. This was what Tang Nuyu had expected a long time ago. If she had not been so stupid as to be bewitched by these men, she would have let these masters sent by the late emperor to listen to their orders, help them pass on messages, and use these people to frame the empress. With the empress's intelligence and talent, these people probably wouldn't succeed so easily. It was because of her stupidity that these people were being used by these men. Therefore, when these people wanted to wake Eunchio up, she only felt excitement in her heart. Your Highness, Eunchio is very tired and has fallen asleep. Let me play with you, okay? The sudden voice made Tang Nuyu very excited. That's fucking great. This prince didn't go to you, but you came to me yourself. Then I won't be polite. Tang Nuyu smiled foolishly and waved the whip. Her eyes were fixed on Dan Gu, who was the husband of this body of hers, as if there was a green light in her eyes. When Dan Gu saw the look in Tang Nuyu's eyes, there was a trace of regret in her heart. Chapter 873. The fool in front of him was not a normal person. Looking at the bloody whip, Dan Gu summoned all his courage to not turn around and run away. Dan Gu. Tang Nuyu imitated the fool in his memory and cracked the whip on the ground, making a loud noise. Dan Gu, do you want to play with me? Dan Gu looked at Eunchio, who was dying, and finally nodded with a smile that he thought was appropriate. Yes, I like to play with you. That's great. Dan Gu, come and play with me. Come on. Tang Nuyu had a villain in his heart and couldn't wait to wave the whip. Come on, I'll play you to death. Dan Ji's feet seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds, and he dragged himself to Tang Nuyu step by step. Tang Gua, who was secretly watching all this, was amused when he saw Dan Ji's legs trembling. Interesting. Dear host, are you not going to make trouble for Tang Nuyu? After all, the death of the original host had something to do with her. Tang Gua smiled. I didn't forget. Let me think about what to do later. I still have to take revenge. System, okay, I shouldn't have reminded you. How could a person like the host forget about revenge? I'm talkative. Dear host is so vengeful. Dan Gu thought that Tang Nuyu whipped Eunchio only because Eunchio was a lowly servant and he was the husband of a princess. He wouldn't be treated the same way. His relationship with Tang Nuyu was quite good, and she liked to play with him, so it was unlikely that she would actually use her whip on him. However, when the whip came down and landed directly on his face, he felt that he was wrong. How could such a fool remember who he was? She only thought of him as a fun toy. Dan Gu hated her, but the pain in his body made him forget about it for the time being. Tang Nuyu didn't care. This Dan Gu didn't fool her. Like Yin Qiu, he was not a good person. He didn't like her, but he smiled at her and was gentle to her. He made her fall in love with him and finally abandoned her. Tang Nuyu didn't show any mercy. She hit Dan Gu until he fainted. Her hand was a little bruised. Then she gave up, turned around, and skipped away with a silly smile. She was a fool now. How could she care about others? How could she know that a whip would hurt people? Yin Qiu slightly woke up. Before Tang Nuyu left, she looked back and smiled foolishly. Yin Qiu, I'll play with you tomorrow. Yin Qiu, who had just recovered, fainted. Tomorrow? Forget it. He would not come out tomorrow. Tang Guo watched as Tang Nuyu returned to her room. She grimaced in pain as she held her bruised hand. She secretly muttered to herself about how to restore her brain. She held her chin and narrowed her eyes. System, I'm guessing that the great host is planning something devious. Alright, you keep watch here. If there's any movement from those men, Tongzi, tell me immediately. Okay, dear host. Tang Guo thought of the man who was dancing with the sword. She got up and was about to have a look. Unexpectedly, a servant came to report, Your Majesty, young Master Nan wants to see you. Let him in. Tang Guo had no choice but to sit down. She listened to the sound of light footsteps gradually approaching. Soon, she saw a handsome man with a smile on his face walk in. Nan Yunchuan first held his fists and bowed 90 degrees to Tang Guo. Yunchuan greets Your Majesty. Rise. Chapter 874. Your Majesty, the weather is clear today. Do you want to go to the Imperial Garden with Yunchuan to enjoy the flowers and tea? Nan Yunchuan's smile made people feel very comfortable. He had a pair of peach blossom eyes. When he looked at anyone, it made people feel that he was looking at that person with deep affection. As an empress, the original owner was not yet an adult, so she didn't know much about love. But because of Nan Yunchuan's initiative, she inevitably had more impression of Nan Yunchuan. She was familiar with him and had a deeper impression of him. In her harem, she attached more importance to him. When an emperor attached importance to one of them, it meant that this person could get a lot of things. Nan Yunchuan not only made people feel comfortable when he spoke, but he was also very talented. He was proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. After he entered the palace, the original owner saw him the most in the harem. Since Nan Yunchuan invited her, Tang Guo naturally had to go. She glanced at Nan Yunchuan, who never stopped smiling. This person was a smiling tiger. In front of the original owner, he gave a lot of gentleness, but when he turned around, he was full of schemes. The original owner was young. Although she already had a firm and cold heart of an emperor, she was still a little girl. She may not have any feelings for Nan Yunchuan, but she really put this person in her heart. If she didn't have a little more trust in Nan Yunchuan, she wouldn't have lost so quickly. Who would have thought that Nan Yunchuan, a servant in the harem, would have the idea of overthrowing the empress's rule? Since it's Yunchuan's invitation, how can I not go? Tang Guo's lips unconsciously evoked a smile. The empress's smile was always shallow and restrained. Because she was the empress had taught her since she was a child not to show too much expression, so as not to be guessed by others. In other words, even if her heart was in a panic, she had to smile on the surface. Even if she was very happy, she wouldn't laugh like ordinary people. Her eyes would only curve slightly and the corners of her lips would rise. Of course, this was limited to the servants who were familiar with her, like Nan Yunchuan. If it was in the court, she wouldn't show too much expression at all. She would always look indifferent, like a little girl who didn't know how to laugh or cry. The late emperor only had 2 daughters. One of them was Tang Nuyu, who was a fool. The other one was Tangua. Back then, the late emperor had been injured in the fight for the throne, and his lifespan was not long. His eldest daughter was born mentally retarded because she was drugged. Later, in order to give birth to a healthy heir, she nursed her body for many years and finally gave birth to Tangua. But this time, her vitality was almost depleted. However, she still persisted until Tangua was 10 years old. She pushed this young girl onto the throne before leaving. The two of them walked to the imperial garden one after another, with a large number of palace servants following behind them. Nan Yunchuan smiled the whole time and said some funny words. At most, it could make Tangua smile faintly. But even so, Nan Yunchuan understood that he should leave a deeper impression on the Empress. Of course, his goal was to make the Empress trust him. Only if the Empress trusted him would he have the chance to overthrow this country ruled by a woman and allow men to stand at the pinnacle of power and rise in status. Tangua glanced at Nan Yunchuan from the corner of her eyes and suddenly asked, Yunchuan, are you used to it in the palace? Used to it, where your majesty is, how can I not be used to it? Thank your majesty for your concern. Yunchuan is a little flattered. Chapter 875. Nan Yunchuan smiled ingratiatingly, without losing his demeanor. There were probably not many women who did not like people like him. Tangua smiled faintly, that's good. What I mean is, if you miss your family, I can allow you to leave the palace for 2 days. I'll give you the time to contact, pass on the news, and discuss the plan. Does your majesty like flowers? Nan Yunchuan suddenly said, pointing to a blooming flower, your majesty's face is as beautiful as this flower. However, your majesty is more beautiful than the flower. Your majesty's beauty is not like a flower that has a flowering period. In Yunchuan's heart, your majesty will continue to be beautiful like this. System, host, this guy is really glib-tongued. His words are so greasy. Tangua glanced at the flower. It was a beautiful red rose. She said indifferently, it's alright, but compared to flowers, I prefer flower tea. Even the words of love that Nan Yunchuan had prepared for a long time were cut off at this time. He was praising His Majesty, saying that she was more beautiful than flowers, and that her beauty lasted longer than flowers. However, His Majesty's focus was really strange. He actually said that she liked flower tea. But Nan Yunchuan quickly reacted and laughed heartily. Unfortunately, Yunchuan knows some small tricks to make flower tea. When your majesty is free, you can come to Yunchuan's place and have Yunchuan make you a cup of flower tea. Alright. Tangua replied indifferently, and changed the topic to Nan Yunchuan's return home to visit his family. Yunchuan, do you miss home? When you want to go back, send someone to tell me. Then, pick some jade artifacts and send them to your father. Nan Yunchuan really did not expect that Tangua was serious about letting him go back to visit his family. Men like them, from the day they entered the palace, basically did not expect to go home. But today, His Majesty actually wanted him to go home to visit his family. Was this sincere, or was it a test? Your Majesty, Yunchuan. Don't you want to? Tangua looked at Nan Yunchuan. I don't think anyone doesn't want to go home. I heard from Lord Nan that your father's health hasn't been good recently. Are you really not going back to take a look? When we go back, we will order people to bring back some medicinal herbs that can nourish the body. Nan Yunchuan was startled for a moment, but when he remembered that his father was indeed in poor health, he couldn't think too much about it. He hurriedly bowed 90 degrees and said, Thank you, Your Majesty. The corner of Tangua's mouth curled up slightly, but Nan Yunchuan did not see the deep smile in her eyes. He was still a little excited. He had been in the palace for a long time, and he could finally go back and see his father. His only concern was his father's health. It was also because of his father that he decided to overthrow the country that was ruled by women. His father came from a small family and was raised as a delicate boy. Later, he was sent to his mother as a plaything. Ever since he was young, his father had taught him not to lose his manly aura. His mother had never valued his father and only treated him as a plaything. Her father was not treated well in the mansion. However, ever since he had curried favor with the Empress, his father's life had become much better for the Empress's sake. Nan Yunchuan thought about it for a long time. After thinking about his father, he forgot about his gratitude to Tangguo just now. No matter how the Empress treated him, he would overthrow this country. He had to kill her with his own hands. Chapter 876. If she wanted to blame someone, she could only blame herself for being the Empress of the West Saint Empire. The Empress of the West Saint Empire was destined to be sacrificed in this battle. Yunchuan, you're distracted. Nan Yunchuan was awakened by Tangguo's emotionless voice. How could he be distracted at this time? He hurriedly apologized, Your Majesty, please forgive me. It's Yunchuan's fault. It's fine. Are you missing your father? I can understand, because I often miss my Empress mother. Nan Yunchuan smiled, Thank you for your understanding, Your Majesty. After that, Nan Yunchuan accompanied Tangguo to stroll around the imperial garden. Tangguo's words were full of importance and concern for Nan Yunchuan. Nan Yunchuan's mind was almost disturbed by the Empress's indifferent tone, but with genuine concern. It was clearly him who came to confuse the Empress. Why was his heart almost disturbed? Especially the Empress's eyes, compared to others, were more majestic. She was focused and serious when looking at him. There was often a faint smile in her eyes. When she mentioned his past, her eyes would light up. Nan Yunchuan was not a fool. On the contrary, he was very smart. The Empress's intimate behavior made him believe that the Empress was really moved by him. Otherwise, as an Empress, she would not show such an expression to him. He was a little excited. The Empress was moved by him. He really did not expect it to be so much ahead of schedule. That's right. The Empress was only 15 years old. She was just a little girl, not an adult yet. There was no problem in dealing with state affairs, but she was still a blank when it came to feelings. He had worked so hard for so long. If he did not succeed, then there would be something wrong with the Empress. Tangguo saw the deep thought and excitement in Nan Yunchuan's eyes. The corners of her mouth rose slightly. Be proud. I will let you know what it means to be conceited and what it means to fail miserably. After a long time, the two parted. Nan Yunchuan left with light steps. He seemed to walk with the wind. In a place where no one could see, he could not stop smiling. If he received the Empress's sincerity, his dream would be one step closer. Suddenly, he thought of the Empress's young face, that faint and happy smile, and that pair of overly focused eyes. He was a little absent-minded. He quickly shook his head. He was someone who wanted to overthrow the West Saint nation. He could not be soft-hearted. Even if the Empress was innocent, she could only sacrifice herself for the sake of the future status of all the men. Dear host, he seemed to have hesitated before. I only hesitated. Tangguo didn't miss the expression on Nan Yunchuan's face. What should be done will still be done. Have you forgotten what happened in the past? If these men want to overthrow the rule of women, they must take my life. Only then will they be able to intimidate the world. The system sighed. Then he was a little pitiful. Now that the great host was here, wouldn't they be miserable? He was curious as to how his host was going to deal with these people. But looking at his host's sinister smile, he decided not to ask. It was necessary to maintain a sense of mystery. There was no point in revealing spoilers. Just like that, Tangua got used to her identity as an empress on the same day she arrived in West Saint Empire. Moreover, she was an empress with more than 30 husbands, although none of them had anything to do with her. She followed the habits and time of the original owner, going up and down. Every day when she passed by some places, she would see many elegantly dressed husbands. They all seemed to be doing their own things. No one saw her figure. Chapter 877. Some people left a side profile for her. In fact, this was their best side profile. Some people were reciting poems in the distance. Their voices were hearty and pleasant. They were all reading to her. Some people were painting in the imperial garden. From time to time, they would spread out the painting, and the position was even facing the place where she passed by. In fact, their eyes were all glancing at her from the corner of their eyes. "Host, are you feeling good? Are you like those women fighting for favor in the harem?" In fact, if you change roles, everyone is the same. Regardless of whether the host was feeling good or not, he was still feeling quite good. Many women were also talented, but in the end, they still had to use their appearance to confuse the king. Men used their talent to show their charm, and appearance was slightly secondary. Tangua passed by expressionlessly, ignoring these men who wanted to seduce her. Without looking back, she could feel the disappointed gazes of a large group of people. In fact, she was laughing crazily in her heart. To be honest, she was also a little happy. It turned out that men fighting for favor was like this. Until she heard a sad zither sound and unconsciously stopped. Of course, she didn't want to stop, but because she was somewhat interested in the owner of the zither sound, she still gave the other party face. Standing by the side of the flowers, she stared at the person in the pavilion and listened carefully to the other party's zither sound. The other party seemed to be intoxicated by his own zither sound and did not notice Her Majesty the Empress not far away. When the zither sound stopped and he saw Tangua, his expression was a little frightened. He hurriedly came down and bowed to Tangua. "Su Qing greets Your Majesty. Get up." Tangua waved her hand. "Just now, I heard sadness from your zither sound. Did you think of something sad? Can you tell me? It's just a small matter. It's better not to disturb Your Majesty. Speak, I'm willing to listen." The corners of Tangua's mouth rose. Su Qing lowered her head and did not see her expression. In those eyes, there was a hint of teasing. At this time, she suddenly felt another special gaze. She subconsciously looked for it and saw a person by the lake. That person was tall and slender, even taller than the average man. He looked at Tangua with a pair of calm eyes. There was a strange, curious, and probing look in his eyes. Tangua smiled at that person. Jing Qing did not expect that the Empress, who usually did not show much emotion, would actually show him a bright smile. Yes, this smile was too dazzling. His heart skipped a beat at that moment. Tangua put away her smile and no longer looked at Jing Qing. Instead, she turned to look at Su Qing. "Su Qing, tell me, what sad thing do you have? I want to hear it." "Yes." Su Qing sighed. It was Su Qing who thought of her brother who had passed away a long time ago. In a few days, it will be the anniversary of her brother's death. It's just that Su Qing has already entered the palace and can't pay respects to her brother, so she's a little sad. Tangua almost laughed out loud. What brother? He clearly knew that Nan Yunchuan could go back to visit his family, but he couldn't hold back and was ready to go out together. The two of them had already discussed it. So that's how it is. Tangua frowned. Then it's my negligence. How about this, I allow you to go back and pay respects to your brother. 2 days, is that enough? Your Majesty, Tangua did not want to talk to him anymore, so she said directly, I won't take back my words. You pack up and pick a day to leave the palace. Su Qing was stunned for a moment. Tangua had already left, so she happily thanked her. She looked deeply at Tangua and turned to leave. Tangua turned a corner and saw Jingqing again. Imperial husband, why are you here? She asked with a smile. The corner of Jing Cheng's mouth twitched. Was this their Majesty? Chapter 878. Greetings, Your Majesty. Even though he had seen the other side of the Empress before, Jingqing still bowed to Tangua obediently. His movements were neat and tidy, completely different from the guy who wanted to show off before. His eyes didn't wander around, and he looked at Tangua with a very serious gaze. Imperial husband, you haven't answered my question. Jingqing didn't quite understand why the Empress was suddenly interested in him. Moreover, the Empress seemed to be a little different. Previously, in front of others, she looked the same as before, without any changes. Only when she stared at him, there were some changes. Jingqing, who had been deep in the palace, suddenly understood. Could it be that the Empress had some thoughts? Of course, he didn't think that the Empress had any thoughts about him. She probably wanted to use him to do something, or use his identity to do something, or even want his identity. However, with his intuition, the Empress didn't seem to want to drive him out of this position. Jingqing didn't care about the position of the Empress's husband at all. His status was high. During this period, as long as there were no big mistakes, he would definitely be the Empress's husband in the end, or the late Emperor himself. But compared to being the Empress's husband, he still wanted to go to the battlefield. His father and mother had met on the battlefield. Compared to the other courtiers' families, their Jing family was still a little different. In the Jing family, it was rare that men and women were much more equal. He didn't have any ill feelings towards the Empress, nor did he have any special good feelings. Since entering the palace, he had seen her a few times. After all, he was the Empress's husband, and the Empress was not an adult yet. Even if she didn't do anything, she would still take the time to visit his palace. The Empress was undoubtedly a qualified Empress. Before that, the other party would choose a time a month to visit the various palaces. The rest of the time was basically spent worrying about the country and the people, dealing with political affairs. However, ever since Su Qing and Nan Yunchuan entered the palace, the Empress had indeed looked at them in a new light. But he still didn't care about these things. If the Empress didn't like him, that would be the best. He still had a lot of time to practice martial arts. He was the Empress's husband, so he could do whatever he wanted in his own palace. No one dared to disturb him. Even if the Empress had someone she favored, as long as he didn't make any mistakes, she wouldn't embarrass him. In fact, this kind of life. Imperial husband. Are you daydreaming? Tangua moved closer. Jingqing hurriedly woke up, apologized, and answered the question just now. The weather is good today, and I also want to go to the Imperial Garden to admire the flowers and bask in the sun. What he said was true. But when he saw the jealous male attendants in the distance, his expression became uneasy. Everyone was waiting for the Empress here. He had chosen the wrong time today. Is that so? Tangua moved closer and looked into Jingqing's eyes. Jin thought that Imperial hubby came here to wait for Jin. It seems that Jin misunderstood and thought that Imperial hubby was also interested in Jin. Jingqing, I'm sure there's something wrong with this Empress. The Empress was a serious person. She would never joke around, let alone say such flirtatious words to him. His mind was filled with all sorts of thoughts. At this moment, a decent-looking male attendant walked over and bowed to Tangua with a smile on his face. Greetings, Your Majesty. Rise. Tangua's smile disappeared and she resumed her previous expression, which made Jing Chang's suspicion disappear. Her Majesty was still that Her Majesty, that's right. So, how could Her Majesty be different in front of him? Chapter 879. Seeing that Tangua was paying attention to him, the male attendant was overjoyed. He was about to ask Tangua if she wanted to sit at his place. He had heard that Her Majesty liked flower tea and was about to show off his skills. In the end, Tangua spoke first. Since we've met His Majesty here, why don't you take a walk with me? Tangua raised her hand and motioned for Jing Qing to support her. Jing Qing endured the confusion in his heart and obediently walked to her side and raised his hand. Then, a small, warm hand rested on his arm. The moment it touched his arm, he had a very strange feeling. He stared at that beautiful, jade-like hand. In that instant, he had an impulse to hold it. Of course, it was only for a moment. He hurriedly suppressed the thoughts that he shouldn't have and continued to support Tangua forward without looking sideways. The smile on the male attendant's face stiffened. He looked at Jing Qing with a very vicious gaze. Jing Qing seemed to sense something and couldn't help but look back. However, the other party had already looked away with his head lowered. But with his intuition as a martial arts practitioner, the other party's gaze was like a knife. It was very unfriendly. Why is His Majesty looking at those little Olyuos? Do you really think they can do anything to you? Tangua spoke at this time. The words she said shocked Jing Qing. What did Her Majesty mean by this? No matter how he heard it, it sounded like she was protecting him. This must be an illusion. He couldn't help but glance at Tangua from the corner of his eye. Seeing that she was looking at him with a smiling gaze, he hurriedly looked away. Something was wrong. The Empress was especially strange when she was in front of him. There was no problem that the Empress could smile. Everyone would have moments when they were happy and would smile. But the Empress's smile was always very shallow. But in front of him, she smiled so brightly. He couldn't help but think more. So, what did Her Majesty mean by this? Your Majesty, we're about to reach the end of the Imperial Garden. Seeing that they were about to walk out of the Imperial Garden, the two didn't speak during this time, so Jing Qing had to remind her. If they continued walking, they would reach another place. I see. Tangua came to her senses and glanced at Jing Chang's puzzled expression. She felt happy. It's time for lunch. Jing Chang's heart relaxed. That's right, Your Majesty the Empress, quickly return to your palace for lunch. Taking a walk wasn't fun at all. Let's go to my husband's palace for dinner today. Tangua didn't give Jing Qing a chance and directly ordered. Soon, her words would reach the imperial kitchen, and all the meals would be sent to the imperial husband's palace. Jing Qing was speechless. Imperial husband, let's go. The sun is getting hot and Zhen is thirsty. I want to drink some water. Tangua looked at Jing Qing as she spoke. Jing Qing braced himself and nodded. He supported Tangua into his palace. When he arrived at the palace, he hurriedly ordered someone to make tea for Tangua. He remembered that she had previously mentioned that she liked flower tea. He was a martial artist, so he could hear sounds from far away. When he gave the order, he subconsciously said, "Make some fresh flower tea for Her Majesty." After he finished speaking, he saw Tangua looking at him with a pair of satisfied eyes. He thought that was it, but Tangua still opened her mouth to speak. Imperial husband still understands Zhen's preferences. Jing Qing wanted to say, "No, Your Majesty, you misunderstood." This was what he had accidentally heard just now. In this harem, Jing Qing actually understands that Zhen likes flower tea. Tangua didn't give Jing Qing a chance to explain. When the flower tea was served, she drank it with a satisfied expression. Jing Qing, what if Her Majesty misunderstands? Chapter 880. System, dear host, what's wrong with Jing Qing? Suddenly, he thought of something and screamed. Host, is he that guy? Looking at Tangua's smiling eyes, the system remembered that Tangua said that Jing Qing was especially handsome when he was dancing with his sword. The system understood everything. No wonder the dear host was so happy after confirming that Jing Qing did not do anything wrong to her. No wonder the dear host specially looked at the plot. The Jing family was absolutely loyal to the Empress. At that time, Nan Yunchuan and the others wanted to get rid of the Jing family first. Although the Empress was young, she was not stupid. When she found out that there was a conspiracy, she went along with it and removed Jing Chang's identity as the Empress. Moreover, she sent General Jing to guard the border. This should be the last thing this young Empress could do. As for the later part of the plot, Jing Qing joined the army and went to the battlefield. General Jing did not seem to have given up on avenging the Empress. As for the later part of the plot, there was nothing. Because these plots did not belong to the female lead's world. Because this small world ended with the death of the female lead. It was a tragedy. Imperial husband, what do you like to eat? Tangua put down the teacup and asked Jing Qing with her chin propped up. Jing Qing almost knocked the cup over, but he quickly said, I'm not picky. Oh, so you like to eat everything? Yes. He was indeed not picky. He could eat anything that could enter his mouth. Because he had to practice martial arts every day, his appetite was still a little big. My imperial husband is really an easy person to raise. Tangua said with a smile, didn't I make a profit? Forgive Jing Qing for not being able to stay calm. The Empress was really strange. When lunch was served, Jing Qing was still very reserved at first. Even if he really wanted to eat, he still held it in. The Empress's lunch was indeed sumptuous. It was much better than his. It looked very tempting. Of course, it tasted very delicious. Imperial husband, didn't you say you were not picky? Why aren't you eating? Tangua asked. She had secretly watched this guy eat. Although his movements were elegant and he looked good eating, he was not as reserved as before. However, she would never pretend to be reserved like she was now. Her eating speed was not slow, and her appetite was also very big. Jing Qing couldn't keep up the pretense any longer. Your subject's appetite is a little big. I'm afraid I'll offend your majesty if I finish. It's fine. Go ahead and eat. We like watching you eat. Jing Chang's hand trembled and he almost smashed the bowl. However, he also believed that the Empress would not blame him for anything. He tried to speed up while observing the Empress's expression. She indeed looked very happy. At first, he was just testing the waters. Later on, the food was simply too delicious and suited his appetite. In addition, he had been practicing martial arts the entire morning, so he was indeed a little hungry. It didn't take long for her to show her true colors. Not only did she eat quickly, but she was also very good-looking. Tangua took 2 bites and watched him eat. The pale-faced servant beside Jing Qing wanted to stop her, but was stopped by Tangua's gaze. The palace servant's face was filled with despair. He was an old man brought into the palace by Jing Chang's family. Seeing his young master eating so impolitely in front of the Empress, he really wanted to faint. Young master, eat slowly, eat less. Her Majesty the Empress is watching. However, Jing Qing had already gradually relaxed. It was as if the person sitting beside him was not the Empress, but a normal person. He was satisfied and full. Suddenly, he thought of something and his entire body stiffened. He glanced at the almost empty dishes and then at the pale-faced palace servant. He couldn't smile anymore. Chapter 881. My imperial husband's appetite is really good. Looks like I've been negligent and neglected you. Tangguo drank her tea happily, as if she didn't see Jing Chang's stiff expression. She ordered the chief steward beside her, in the future, add 4 more dishes for my imperial husband's lunch and dinner. Bring more of the usual pastries for my imperial husband as well. Jing Chang thought, is there something wrong with this? Since you're my imperial husband, I won't let you starve. If it's not enough, send someone to tell the chief steward, and he'll make the arrangements. What else could Jing Chang say? The empress really didn't mind him eating so much, and even wanted to add more dishes for him. For more dishes for lunch and dinner. Jing Chang's worry disappeared, and his impression of the empress improved. She even wanted to prepare pastries for him. This time, he looked at Tangguo with a much gentler gaze. No matter what the empress's motive was, he would still cooperate fully for the sake of food. Thinking about how the Jing family was loyal to the empress, it wasn't a big deal for the empress to treat him differently. So the empress's performance was actually a sign of her trust in him. She suddenly got closer to him and rewarded him. Most likely, she wanted him to do something for her in the future. After thinking it through, Jing Chang accepted the reward with a clear conscience. Not long after sending Tangguo away, he also received a lot of other rewards. It wasn't a jade pendant, gold, silver, or satin. It was a top-notch sword. Looking at the sword, Jing Chang's eyes lit up, and his impression of the empress improved. Tangguo, on the other hand, was sitting in her own palace, watching the scene of Jing Chang wielding his sword. It was really too easy to cater to his liking. Not long after, the chief steward came in and said softly, "My imperial husband is very grateful for your majesty's reward," and even said something. What did he say? Tangguo asked. The chief steward smiled and said, "My imperial husband said that if your majesty has any orders, he will definitely do it well." Tangguo, system, ha 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 ha, so he thought there was some errand for him to do. He completely didn't expect the host to be interested in that guy. I understand. Tell him that I will have something for him to do in the future. Yes, your majesty. In the following days, Tangguo didn't go to Jing Chang. Jing Chang was not disappointed. This was within his expectations. The empress was actually not very close to anyone. She trusted him. As for Nan Yunchuan, it was probably because he was better at coaxing people. Su Qing knew how to play the zither and could make the empress feel happy. As for the others, it was not so easy to please the empress. When he entered the palace, his parents had told him to behave himself. If he had nothing to do, he should stay in the palace and practice his swordsmanship instead of fighting for favor. If the empress needed him to do anything, he would do his best to cooperate with the empress. He felt that his parents were really far-sighted. Waving the treasured sword that he loved so much, his heart was incomparably carefree. Her Majesty the Empress had bestowed him with such a powerful treasured sword, so he naturally had to work for her with all his heart. Dear host, congratulations on gaining a loyal subject. It had never thought that the host would experience something like this one day. Tangguo glanced at Jing Chang's figure as he danced with the sword. I'm not angry at all. One day, he will have different thoughts about me. In the past 2 days, Nan Yunchuan and Su Qing had both left the palace. Of course, they had also met. Later, they met Tang Nuyu. At that time, Tang Nuyu happened to think of a way to turn herself into a normal person. In fact, Tang Nuyu's way of recovering her intelligence was very simple. Chapter 882. Tang Nuyu thought about it. Since there were so many schemes and tricks, it was better to be simple. It seemed to be full of loopholes, but in fact, it was the least likely to arouse suspicion. Therefore, she chose a time and hired a servant to secretly smash her head. When she woke up, she became smarter. Although it was unbelievable, this method was indeed not easy to arouse suspicion. Moreover, she had seen similar situations in unofficial history and some books. That day, she brought people and wore ordinary clothes. When she passed through a small alley, a flower pot suddenly fell from above and knocked her out. Although she was prepared, she had combed a thick hairstyle that day and cleverly dodged the flower pot the moment it fell. However, she still saw stars in her eyes, but because she was prepared, she was not seriously injured. When the people around her saw this situation, they hurriedly carried Tang Nuyu into a nearby inn. This was because this place was really far from the Moon King's residence. Not long after, Tang Nuyu woke up and began to become smarter. The people around her were all very surprised. Of course, more of them were happy. The group of people secretly returned to the residence. They did not know that this scene had already been seen by Nan Yunchuan, Su Qing, and the others. The fool has become good. Nan Yunchuan narrowed his eyes. Originally, I was thinking about how to proceed with this matter. Everyone, what do you think now? Everyone present was smart. Other than Nan Yunchuan and Su Qing, there was also Xiao Jin. At this time, Shan Gu and Yin Qiu had not joined forces with them yet. We still have to investigate the matter of the fool becoming smart. We have to see if she has just become smart or if she has been smart for a long time. We must be careful. Xiao Jin's scheming was the most profound. You guys are about to return to the palace, so it's definitely inconvenient to do these things. Let me go and test it out. Coincidentally, my identity is a hostage and I have no involvement with anyone else. If I appear by her side, it will not arouse anyone's suspicion. Of course, it's best if we can enter the Moon King's residence. That way, we can observe her closely. If there's no problem with her and it's really because this flower pot is not stupid, it'll be much easier to use. Xiao Jin's smile was sinister. The other two thought that this was a good idea and nodded. After that day, Xiao Jin used some means to get to know Tang Nuyu. This was actually about the same time as the original development. Only God knew how long Tang Nuyu had held herself back from killing Xiao Jin. She knew that Xiao Jin was a scheming person. She had to be careful when interacting with such a person. However, Xiao Jin did not suspect anything for someone who had died once and used all sorts of excuses to get away with it. She followed her original plan and didn't want to show how smart she was. If she was careful and did not reveal any flaws, Xiao Jin would suspect her. Therefore, her performance was similar to her previous life. Although Xiao Jin had many doubts in his heart, there was one thing he was certain of. Although this woman was normal, she was definitely not smart. To put it bluntly, he was stupid and easy to coax. With this idea in mind, Xiao Jin planned to make use of Tang Nuyu. Little did he know that he had fallen into the hands of Tang Nuyu. The two of them developed very quickly. After Tang Nuyu woke up, the entire imperial city knew about it. Of course, Tang Guo would summon her into the palace to show her concern for her eldest sister. Tang Nuyu was waiting for this day. It was normal. Does the Moon King like him very much? Tang Guo asked expressionlessly, but there was some concern in her eyes. Does the sixth prince also like the Moon King? Tang Nuyu did not understand, but still answered, this subject likes him very much. I also like the Moon King very much. Xiao Jin quickly expressed his loyalty. He thought that the Empress was concerned about Tang Nuyu and was afraid that he would cause trouble. Tang Guo nodded, since the two of you like each other, why not bring the sixth prince into the palace? With the sixth prince's status, he can be the Moon King's concubine. Tang Nuyu, can it be like this? Chapter 884. Xiao Jin, fuck your concubine. Thank you, Your Majesty. Tang Nuyu finally reacted and revealed a sweet smile. Ha ha ha, wasn't Xiao Jin high and mighty? He grew up in a male-dominated society and couldn't tolerate being married to a woman. But he was now infatuated with her, and she also acted like she liked him. Of course, she would happily agree to the Empress's proposal. They hadn't instilled in her the idea that the Empress might harm her. She just subconsciously thought that the Empress didn't like her, so she was afraid. But when the Empress wanted to help them marry, she was happy. Even if Xiao Jin was a prince of another country, he was just an abandoned prince who lost in a political battle. Being a concubine was already a favor for him. But Xiao Jin didn't think so. He was still waiting to borrow the power of West Saint Nation to turn things around for himself. Those people from the state of Qi had sent him here to humiliate him. Because they knew that West Saint Nation was ruled by women. The men here were like the women of Qi, low in status. Men were married to women, and women could marry many men. Now that the Empress wanted to marry him, because of his situation, he had to obey. Originally, Tang Nuyu didn't agree so readily. He might have a way to get away. But Tang Nuyu agreed happily, so he could only accept it. Moon King is so happy, I am also very happy. The date of the marriage will be decided by Moon King himself. Yes, Your Majesty. Tang Nuyu quickly bowed. The Empress was so good, so understanding of her thoughts. The Empress was really cute. She actually thought of marrying her. Although it might be a casual thing, she really wouldn't refuse. These men had schemed against her, and she really liked them. Starting over, she wanted revenge, but she wouldn't refuse to be close to them. Even sleeping next to each other, she felt pretty good. But she would not be moved again. Since she was in a country like the West Saint Empire, which was ruled by women, she might as well do as the Romans do and enjoy a world where women were respected. Tang Nuyu thought to herself. She glanced at Xiao Jin, who had a dark expression on his face. Sixth Prince, are you dissatisfied? Tang Gua suddenly asked. Xiao Jin hurriedly revealed a smile. His heart was filled with hatred, but on the surface, he smiled and said, not at all. Xiao Jin is just very happy. I didn't expect that the Empress would grant me a marriage and that I would be able to be together with Prince openly. So that's how it is. The Moon King had just recovered, and the late Emperor had instructed us to take good care of the Moon King. The Moon King is this Emperor's older sister. She has lost a lot, so this Emperor naturally has to satisfy some of her small requests. Since both of you are in love with each other, this Emperor has to fulfill this beautiful matter. Tang Nuyu's eyes lit up. Yes, they were sisters. Of course, they should care about each other. So cute. The Empress is her younger sister. However, they couldn't get too close right now. Xiao Jin would be suspicious, and the Empress would also be suspicious. She didn't want to have a falling out with her Empress sister and cause the other party to be dissatisfied. Moon King, now that you have recovered, is there anything else you want? This subject doesn't want anything. Tang Nuyu glanced at Xiao Jin, a flash of shyness on her face. This subject is already very grateful to be able to receive the Empress's permission to marry me today. Xiao Jin was about to explode in anger. Then, have you thought of a good day? This subject will go back and look through it. Tang Nuyu thought to herself. Of course, the sooner the better. Tang Gua nodded. When they left, Tang Nuyu was very happy. In order not to be suspected, Xiao Jin could only smile and be happy with her. He didn't know how many times he cursed in his heart. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.